introductions. Good afternoon and welcome everyone in the hall. I, uh, it's a privilege to be here, and we are about to start the first panel, and that is on mutual recognition frameworks for digital skills. Uh, Mutual recognition framework for the skills, and how I would like to do this thing. I would introduce each of my panelists as I go with them with the questions. Idea is that this mutual recognition framework, which is a very policy intensive and has many connotations of it, uh, this will be broken into the various pieces so that it will be easily understood by the job seekers, job providers, and the trainers. I think they make the largest component of the audience here. And we have few job, we have the government persons also. Uh, I would like to just to break it into the pieces, I would like to share some context for the ease of understanding of it. The mutual recognition framework is basically to equip the talent to know that how the qualifications, how the skills, how the experience can be recognized across the various stakeholders. Whether the different stakeholders, when we say different stakeholders, one is the job seeker, the students, learners, workforce. Second one are the skilling institutes. Third one are the job creators. And fourth is the government. These four stakeholders should be able to talk to in the common language, and they should be able to contribute towards the advancement of the economy. Now, who looks for the cross-border, who looks for the talent actually? The one is, who is looking for the talent? Talent is being looked after by the institutions, skilling educational institutions, because they have the better talent, they will be able to deliver better. Second one is by the employers. Third one is the countries with active skilled human resource based immigration plan. And at individual level, what are the drivers for mobility? Any individual first look after the training and education opportunities. Second, he looks after the employment and occupation opportunities. And third, he looks after the geographical migration opportunities, if it is available. So this is the context on which mutual recognition framework for the skills depends upon. In order to put the current way how the things are being done in India, I would like to start with my first panelist, Mr. Nirmaljit Singh Kalsi. He has long and illustrious career in Indian Service Services, and he is presently chairperson of the National Council for Vocational Education and Training, NCVT. NCVT, as you all know, is the overarching regulator for long and short-term trainings in India. Sir, from your long and illustrious career in this domain, human resource and skill development others, I would like to know, sir, that what should be the approach, what should be the principles which actually go for to establish the equivalency part of the recognition of skills, experience, and qualifications?
Excellent question. See, when we talk about equivalence, first of all, we must understand that we are talking about the same thing. So we must have a common definition of skills and qualifications. That is called skill taxonomy. So there has to be a common skill taxonomy which must be understood by all stakeholders, by all countries who are part of that ecosystem. Second is that for any particular job role, there has to be a common understanding about the learning outcomes which are to be achieved to get that job. It is not the qualification, it is the learning outcome which is more important. And these learning outcome, it has number of skills and competencies which are acquired as a result of undergoing a particular training program, of course subject to assessment, and that assessment criteria will have to be specified in great detail. Then when I talk about the level, there are 8 levels which have been prescribed in the European framework, and India is following the same. India also has same levels of 1 to 8. Whether you talk about skills, whether you talk about academics, we have level 1 to 8. So you have to specify as to which particular level this job role is assigned to. Whether this is level 4.5 level job or level 5 job or level 6 job. And these levels are to be qualified with respect to level descriptors. So there are very clear level descriptors which are commonly understood by all the member countries. And once you have achieved those levels, you have to have those level descriptors satisfied. And these level descriptors, we have kept 5 dimensions to that. That is professional and theoretical knowledge, that is first dimension. Then professional and technical skills, second dimension. Then employment readiness skills, including aptitude and mindsets. Then broad learning outcomes and responsibility. So these are the 5 components of the level descriptor. Similarly, one has to have the credit points. Once you have understanding about the skill taxonomy, once you have understanding about the learning outcomes at the level at which the learning outcomes have been achieved, then you talk about credit points. And credit points will have to be same. And then a transparent and efficient process for addressing the skill and competency gaps, if any, between 2 countries. If there are gaps, how you plan to address those gaps to achieve that harmonization. And then one has to establish a very effective communication and collaboration protocol between the countries and stakeholders for achieving the purpose which I've just explained. So that's the broad framework around which we'll have to work around. And if we work around, I don't see any difficulty in establishing equivalence between courses.
Hello. Yeah. Sir, what you explained, that tells that about the designing part of our educational system or training system. We have all the specifications, these are the parts, and part by part we can match between 2 countries and it will establish the equivalence of the qualifications. But sir, mutual recognition framework, the topic of discussion today, goes towards this thing, that how it can help enable into the talent pooling and talent mobility part. And when we say talent mobility, there are 2 aspects of it. One is the talent mobility within the country. You might, for the knowledge of the audience, you might not be facing this thing in India. You might not be aware of this thing, that talent mobility has an issue in India. But countries like Australia suffered from it a lot. Within the states, the talent mobility was restricted prior to mid-90s, when they actually took the steps to do that. Means if you get an education in one state, you are not able to get employed and altogether practice the same kind of profession in other state. This is all with the pre-digital skills economy and those kind of things. But what I'm saying is that in digital skills, the cross-border sourcing, cross-border employment is taking a huge scale, and whole digital economy of future lies into that. So going beyond the mere equivalence of the qualifications, how learning outcomes can be established for the experienced persons, can be established for the people who are looking for geographical and occupational migration, as well as it is not only one way outward migration, it is a return migration also. Let's say I went to America and now my kid has studied there, but now the whole family is coming back to India. My kids' American qualifications will be recognized in India or not. That is the part of it. And it cannot be solely on the equivalence part of it. One question is this. So can you elaborate on that? How it is being taken care at the NCVT right now?
See, this is internationalization. We call it internationalization of qualification framework. That is what we are working on. All the international qualifications, they work, especially the skill qualification, they work on the basis of the NOSIS, that is National Occupation Standards. And again, National Occupation Standards, the basic is the learning outcome. So they match learning outcome wise. And two countries, they sit down together, they want to match two qualifications, they will see what kind of outcomes are achieved at what levels after going through this qualification, and if there are gaps, how those gaps are to be addressed. So that is how we move, and we sign multilateral agreements as well as we sign bilateral agreements. But the process is this only. There is no other process.
Okay, thank you, sir. With this with this knowledge in our available to us, now I will approach our second panelist, Mr. Dr. Dennis Hu. Dr. Dennis Hu is president of Foundation for Commerce and Cultural Interchange, FCCI Taiwan. And we all know that Taiwan is world superpower in electronics manufacturing. Electronics manufacturing, that also on the basis of the SMEs, not on the basis of global corporates and that kind of thing. The country is known for the strength of their SMEs. And President Dr. Dennis Hu has been associated with promotion of several business and industrial cooperation programs. He works as a industry body member. He works with the skill development skill foundation there, and he has been instrumental behind various agreements promoting this equivalence plus promoting the talent mobility between the countries and others. As Dr. Kalsi was saying that equivalence of qualification. Now we would like to know from Dr. Dennis Hu is that this FCCI has more than a decade-long MOU with NILET on equivalence of computer courses. I would like to know from him that this equivalence was established on the basis of NOS protocols and all those kind of things. How much it has resulted actually into the talent mobility, either for the education purpose or for the job purposes. And what is his experience with the other countries also, and does it automatically lead and address this problem in the domain of digital skills, where the job creators and job seekers are not in the same physical locations, and they cannot be treated and restricted and registration requirements as earlier it was happening with the other kind of courses, like you know that how the chartered accountants go for the practicing in other countries, doctors go for the other countries. So digital skills are offering a different kind of a challenge. This is very important information for all the students who are going to be entrepreneur and job seekers. Sir, please. I think I spoke along, but you know the perspective.
Okay, thank you for asking me this question. I think first I would like to say that we are from 100% industry, not academia, but we are a platform to bridge in the industry, government, and academia. So the first answer is not for academia certificate or qualification, especially for job, employee. Okay, so first question, I answer that. I think our young talent will be very happy to know that there are a lot of the job opportunity or employment by the Taiwan ICT industry globally, especially nowadays we have a lot of the company investing in India, like a Pegatron, Foxconn. Well, I think India is a large country. Maybe they are widespread across the India, I think. But take the advantage of the state-of-art ICT technology. Anywhere you can work. So we say not work in Taiwan. We say work with Taiwan. In India, you can work with the Taiwan company. Okay, I think this one. So back to 2011, I have the pleasure to link Naili, Dr. Tripathi, with the Taiwan Major Computer Skills Foundation. That foundation is established in 1989. Actually, it's a long time. Right now, I just received a new record. They got 9.5 million test takers accumulated, the data. And they got spread at a testing site in Taiwan, over 500 testing sites in Taiwan. And I think back to 2011, we have in fact, FCCI is a platform to link for cooperation, international cooperation with Taiwan, with like industry. What I mean industry, the ICT industry. We are not doing the agriculture industry, okay? ICT industry. So back to that, 2011, so I have the pleasure to link with the Dr. Party, with the Computer Skills Foundation to sign a MOU. And in the last 10 years, I think a lot of the new technology is very different than 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we don't have like IoT or like 5G or big data, blockchain. We don't have that one. And even cybersecurity at that time is not the main issue at that time. But nowadays, we found out that maybe we should go to explore some new item for cooperation in the future. So as you mentioned that, so some from my past experience that for the international cooperation, especially in cross-border mutual recognition of the certification, or you can say vocational training, that kind of things. I think several issues, what I found out is that I just, when Dr. Kelsey mentioned, I just write down something. Okay, so the first one, I think different countries, you have to see that the different countries they got a different standard, different situation. Some countries, maybe they are very advanced. In fact, we have the cooperation with like India, with Korea, with Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Myanmar. Okay, but you can see the different country, the need, the requirement is different. When you stay in India, you got a same standard here. But if you do the cross-border cooperation, you have to consider different country, different development, so different needs. Okay, so the first issue is the different country. Is that they needed a skill requirement and the need and the business development is different. So that's why I see a lot of the young talent people in India. The same, I think if you consider about, as you mentioned, that some workforce for Taiwan company, you have to see your skills certificate or your skill training is fit the Taiwan companies, their requirement. And also that's why very important about the mutual recognition, about a certificate, because in Taiwan company, they don't know about what's the standard about the India certificate. Okay. The second one is that the industry trend and some their development needed to be studied first. Give you an example. When I go to Australia, the Australia is not, maybe we don't have an Australian friend here, okay? Australia is not very good in manufacturing about electronics, but they are good in some of the startups. They're good in some advanced technology development. So in that part, we have another certification, some kind of cooperation there. Therefore, I think it's very important. The issue is that you have to do some study and there's some communication and the coordination together. It's a kind of you can say, complex job, but it's also a simple job. Why I say a complex job? It needs a lot of the communication, benchmark, to discuss. So need a lot of the coordination. So it's a complex job. What I say is a simple job. It's not a sophisticated R&D development. It's need to take the action. It's just not, aside from a side of MOU, we need to take the action to do the communication, sit down and allocate a budget to do the communication, coordination. Therefore, it's very important. We needed a consistent and a constant workforce behind the scene to back up the program. So that's what several think I like that. Okay, I'll just stop here. Otherwise, all my time. Okay.
No, not an issue, not an issue. But one aspect, if you can add on, against the background of that 10-year-old NILAT and TCA MOU, uh, is there any data has been kept that how much talent mobility has taken place? And second thing is that from this point of view, that suppose if an equivalency of education has been, qualification has been established, but is it okay for the students or youth who is going for that skill education, or he want to know also about the availability of the jobs related to that in that country, opportunities and all these kind of things. This kind of a data should be made available whenever we are talking about a mutual recognition framework, because recognition only equivalency will not enable the talent mobility, talent pooling just in that way.
You just give me a very difficult answer, a difficult question, that one. You know, in fact, to 100% industry organization like us, we cannot, I don't say we cannot, we are very difficult to keep the tracking about, you know, the young talent, where do they work, or where, you know, mobility like that one. Usually it's take like some like, I think if you got a like government authority, maybe you can you know, get those data accumulated that one. But however, we still do some study, some research on that. What we did, okay, I tell you what we did is we cooperate with some big company like Pegatron, like a Foxconn. When they come to us, say, hey, I want to hire, give you an example. If they say, I want to hire some engineer from India, so we will help them to figure out some of the people, some of the young talent in India, and introduce to them, okay? Introduce to them, and they will give some of the tracking records. So that's why we can accumulate the data like that, in that way. But not the compulsory, that one, okay? But to the government, maybe to the government they can track, you know, because it's by law, okay? And otherwise, if you talk about like a young talent, they talk about some of the skills. I would like to say like that. For cross-border, as you say, mobility to work for overseas for other countries, the mutual recognition of the certificate is one thing, okay, but not complete, okay, not complete. I always say you have to think about if you work for other countries, like in Taiwan, or like Australian friend, they work for Taiwan company, or Taiwan company they have somebody there. They will ask 3 factors. They will consider 3 factors. ASK, I always say ask. What's ask? ASK. Skill is S. Okay? So we are just talking about skill. But usually that's involved, if you cross-border employment is considered ASK as well. A, attitude. S, skill. K, knowledge. So I always say it's an ASK, ask. So if you are, if young talent, if you want to find some employment opportunity with Taiwan, usually the Taiwan company will check about it, ask. So that's involved about the culture and some, you can say some value like that, okay, for some of the reference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Denisu. And actually, with this, we have come to know that mere equivalence plus information about the job opportunities availability plus information on one kind of skills and degrees have been made equivalent. All these things should be available to the talent. And after that, the talent, the individual will be in a much more mature manner, will be able to decide that, okay, here I can move, I can do these things. With this background from the administrative side and from the industry perspective side, and what are these things, I'm moving to Dr. Maria Grazia. Dr. Maria Grazia has a very unique position. She is with the UNICEF, and she is very active in the artificial intelligence and cutting edge technologies, developing the new tools, new methods to identify and measure the changes in the artificial intelligence domain and other cutting edge technologies. And personally, I have seen more than 60 papers where she is involved. And this is not a small thing. Like if I say that what is the deep learning in a particular way for this kind of thing, what is the technology requirement is coming, what is the skill requirement is coming. Definitely this technology are the proprietary technologies being invented by the product technology companies sitting at, you know that what type of countries, USA, Europe and others. And not necessarily talent is available, that level of talent is available locally. Talent might be in India, talent might be available in Myanmar or somewhere. So I want to know, ma'am, from you, my question is that what are the means or trends you are seeing from the industry, technology leaders' point of view, that how they are hiring or sourcing the talent? It is not necessarily coming through the formal skilling instruments, which we have talked about so far. It might be that a doctor is getting hired into artificial intelligence because he has those kind of skills and those kind of language, and he might have acquired it from the informal means. The question is that I would like to that what kind of industry is hiring, industry is recognizing that skill, and industry is hiring, how they are assessing. That is the question.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? No. Okay, thank you. So in so much as I like our colleagues from UNICEF, I'm from UNESCO. So let's just me point out this, because actually, but we take care in a subsequent kind of fashion from kids to youth, and this is really about getting people onto the labor market. So let me perhaps do a step back and then respond to the issue on the industry, because actually the kind of initiative we are discussing today, the certification, addresses a very much felt need of the industry, that is how to access a talent pool that might not be in the same place. So you need certain skills for people to perform a number of tasks that the kind of production you have requires, and it's not a given that you might have it in the same country, or perhaps the excellence is not in the same place where you're looking for. So let me, and you did a very important question, that is, how do we recognize it? Well, this is a non-trivial problem, because actually this is very well known. I mean, nobody's perfect. I'm an economist as a background, so not an engineer. And there is a whole field of study which is called the search and matching literature that actually deals with this very problem, which has a kind of a funny name, that is the market for lemons. That is, you try to eat a very juicy orange, that is the skills you're looking for, because you need them for your production, and all of a sudden, the person you hire doesn't have the skills that you require, which means this impinges upon two things. First of all, the person, of course, will not be up to the task, so that might lead to layoffs, but in terms of the company, that leads to productivity decrease and impossibility to deliver on the objective. So it is a kind of a sour result for everybody. And this is why the recognition of skills is very important. And it's also important for another reason. First of all, is to try and have an understanding of really what you need. So, as we said, it is important to unpack the jobs in set of tasks. So on your job, every day, you need to do a number of things, from taking care of the planning, if you're in a managerial role, to taking, for instance, care of the real production, if you're in a production role. And what we are seeing, and all the analysis that we see around the world point to the same direction. The new jobs that arise, and we have to try and be future-ready, future-proof, are actually a very big recombination of tasks, which means some of the tasks that can be automated will be at a certain point. Sooner or later, depending on how fast or slow companies are in adopting and developing, for instance, technology that are digital. Those that are not automatable, that require creativity, that require cognitive thinking, that require ability to learn, will be actually redistributed, and we see it already, in new jobs. But the beauty of this going down to the tasks and the skills that are required for actually the task itself is that you can then recombine the training, the education. So then the education and training becomes a life journey, and for that, of course, then you need a number of training methodologies that enable people to learn over the course of life, because let's not be mistaken about the ability of learning. It's true that everybody can learn, but by the time we age, and I mean, I have my own signal towards that, you are slower in learning and perhaps more used to follow your stream of thoughts in the way you believe it's right. So shaping the behavior, shaping the knowledge of people that are farther up in age is relatively more complicated than instilling a number of fundamental concepts in the mind of the young, and the relatively young even more. So this is really an important thing that this certification mechanism tries to get at, that is helping the match on the labor market about what companies need and what are the skills that are available and how to access that. Now, the beauty of the digital technology is that when we talk about mobility, it doesn't need to be physical. So this is a very big change compared to before. Before, if you needed an engineer from India, you had to fly that engineer to whatever, I'm Italian, to Italy. Now you don't need, because through the platform, through different modalities of work, you can access the talent pool, not only in remote, but again, going back to the tasks, in a task-based fashion. I don't need, for instance, if I know you're a fantastic moderator, but for the kind of job I need to do, I need someone to moderate and manage, I can take half, try to hire you on part-time, and then the other part-time goes and looks for another person that has his excellent skills on management. Now, how do I do that, and why it is important to have a certification mechanism, is to help me selecting the right person on the labor market with those skills. Now, this is non-trivial, and we know that there have been many attempts around the world, so I really commend the effort that India is doing in this respect, because what is perhaps easier to achieve is a quasi-equivalence around the world, rather than an exact equivalence. And the reason is that our courses have developed also for historical reasons in different ways, and also the combination of the various modules might be different. So moving towards quasi-equivalence already solves the problem of the market for lemons, which means I know Maria Grazia is skilled in microeconometrics, perhaps not identically as an engineer from India, but I can live with that. And then it helps also solving the problem, and this is also something that is important to consider, having a kind of attestation that really Maria Grazia has the PhD she claims to have. So being able to have an exchange on certification that helps us verifying that a certain person, and this is what you were saying, actually is indeed endowed with a certain set of skills because has been certified. And this is actually, I think, the key to solving a global challenge. AI, digital technologies are global by nature. They don't know boundaries. And we cannot have a solution to a problem that is country-based or region-based. It has to be a global solution, and this is where we need the collaboration of everybody, and including, for instance, starting from the G20.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a lot on how the whole skilling profession is changing, the job of skilling. Future of skills as well as future of jobs, both are dynamic, and challenges are non-linear. Non-linear challenges, you might have seen the earlier presentation by the Miss Maria Grazia, where she was saying the artificial intelligence graph is going like this. I think the future of jobs and future of skills, the challenges are also growing like that. But again, I will be persistent asking in this thing, how the technology leaders in developed countries, India, we are strong as technology integrators, not technology creators. And there are multiple countries, every society which you are referring, that will be technology adopters, whether they like it or hate it. So technology creator is looking for cutting edge talent, and which is not available locally. And there the talent mobility, not every talent can work on remote basis in those domains, artificial intelligence. Do you have any insight or any experience? Because we want to learn, this will be a new thing for all of us here. If you have.
Yeah, so there is a lot of evidence. We are building the evidence, we are extracting the evidence from, for instance, online job platforms, right? So it is fundamental, for instance, to craft the job posting in the right way. It has to be appealing. There is a mechanism which is technically called the self-selection into the labor market. That is, what you actually need to do when you advertise a job is to make it appealing to the best candidate you're trying to reach. and to use, so to convey this call for, proposals, kind of, through the right platform. So it is fundamental to have a package that is attractive to get the best talent. It is fundamental to depict the kind of job you have in the right way, because this will actually call for the right talent to be attracted by it. Channels through actually the channels, whether online, offline, through mouse, because still, as far as it might be, might seem weird, but referral by someone you trust is fundamental. So the importance of networks, physical and digital, is key, because if I know some recruiter has a very good reputation and they're opening for a massive amount of jobs, that's the moment in which all the talent around the world, if rightly posted online, if rightly communicated, will be looking at those job postings. And there is another thing. We know that the best jobs, there is evidence, plenty of evidence, are better paid. So already there is this other component. Now what we also see is the very language that needs to be used in order to convey the same idea. Because these days, for instance, and we have also the evidence about that, an important component of attractive jobs, and this is how the best companies manage to get the best human capital, is in the package. It's not only about the money. What we are seeing, for instance, that this is the first time in history compared to previous, let's say, general purpose technologies that have developed. In terms of AI, you see many of the scientists are working for companies, but they're also remaining in universities, because we understand, and companies understand, the importance of generating the next wave of experts. Because if you take all the experts out of universities and you bring into the companies, where typically you tend to have proprietary type of knowledge and non-disclosure type of clauses, you won't have the wave number 2 of the experts you need. And actually we all heard today, and this is a common problem, we need more and more of these skilled people. So these are the components that make a job attractive, and this is the way in which companies that are leading are identifying the best talents around the world. Evidently still mismatch, that is inaccurate, let's say, sometimes people that are not really the best suited for the job actually get the job. But then you have also, the typical mechanisms on the labor market, whether you can adjust. And then, of course, in this case, let's face it, bigger companies have an advantage, that is, with the sheer amount of tasks and job roles they have, it's easier to mobilize people to perfect the match inside the company. It becomes a bit more challenging for the smaller firms, where you need a certain person really to take care of a relatively big share of the function, and therefore mistakes in the hiring might be more costly.
Thank you, ma'am. With this, now I'm moving to Dr. Yahya Al Marzouki. He's from United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi specifically, and he is Executive Director, Advisory Unit, Tawajjun Council. This Tawajjun Council is responsible in UAE for all the defense-related and security-related acquisitions and developing the indigenous capacity for the integration, advancement, and all the, that Make in India, that kind of a thing. That yes, we might be acquiring the knowledge, gadgets, and all these things from the outside, but how we can now bring our own people, our own industry at par with them. And for that, also the background is that Middle East countries, they have been traditionally at the forefront of sourcing various kinds of skilled workforce from all over the world. And I think Indian diaspora is the biggest one there. So now the talent, sir, my question is this, that how this talent sourcing from outside, the talent mobility, because you have much more developed system for the SS skills, how the employers used to tell you that we are in need of these kind of human resources, and government allows that because it's a much bigger scale there. But now how the talent is going beyond merely sourcing the workforce. You might be sourcing entrepreneurs also. Now you might be sourcing the students for the learning opportunities at your world-class institutions also. So please share some.
Well, thank you very much. Allow me if I can contextualize the notion around the educations. We used to make a lot of decisions based on the opinion. There wasn't enough repository of data that we can rely on, and we can make an informed decision. So we have been collecting data. So we want to find out where is data is pointing. You know, opinion is good, gut feeling is good. I'm not denying that. But when we look at our educational system, we found that when people leave high school, and that is data telling us, they go to university, and the university, they have a foundation year. What do they teach in foundation year? Things that they should have been taught in high school. So they first year of their time is wasted because we didn't have concentrated language, math, and physics, particularly in science domain. And then when they graduate from university and they come to us to the industry, we put another sticker on them and we call them trainees. And that trainee goes for a year and a half, and we started teaching them in some cases, we started building universities and training center. That is not our core business. We are not good at teaching. We should have given that money to university. And so this data has pointed us that we revisit the entire ecosystem related to education. Now, back to your questions. The UAE has always relied on the international workforce. We are only 52 years old nations, and we were building. Now, blue collar, semi-blue collar. So now we are in the phase that, we are attracting, and we are number one by IMD report in attracting talent. Now, when we look at the data, and again, it is not sufficient data to rely on, we found that Generation Z, they have different socio-economic preferences. People in India, they want to stay closer to their family because over time, when you migrate and go, the family structure, the fabric of society disintegrate. That is, again, data pointing us. And we see that the migration, for example, and I'm using because I'm here, of Indian migrating to the West is on the decline. So how do we cater for that? Perhaps, and one of my colleagues mentioned, we don't need to bring them to the UAE. And Mayashi just eloquently articulated that we need to outsource that. And by the way, when we outsource, there is quite a lot of saving that our organization is enjoying. Now the question is, who is leading who? Is the employer an employee? Is there a place for government to come in? I'm not sure, but no, that is, I think. But government need to set the tone. For example, if we have a roadmap in attracting entrepreneurs into the country, we have superb infrastructure, superb law. We have support for a startup ecosystem. We have business incubator. We have created business accelerator. So how do we attract the youngsters that are sitting here into subscribe to that and take advantage of that? And I encourage you, there is a site called for youngsters, if they have an idea that has potential commercial viability, to visit Khalifa Innovation Center. If you Google it, and you can submit your idea, and we fund it. You don't have to come to UAE. You can stay next to your where you are, and we can fund it. We provide you with the technical mentoring. We open for you doors to become part of supply chain of bigger boy. So I encourage youngsters to tap into that. Now, the fact is, the movement of labor is taking place. Talents are moving back and forth, back and forth. The certificate equalization of certificate hasn't moved as fast, and that, I think, a university, they have to create a consortium among each other, and you are as strong as your consortium, and I see the future. For example, I joined a consortium of universities, say, be it IIT, be it Harvard, Stanford, London Business School. I study that path, and I decide which logo I would like to have on my certificate. If I prefer to have a Stanford logo, they all work in the back office, they work in the background, and that is, I think that's the future of education that we are looking to. It is foggy. It's still not clear, but we are pursuing that path. We call it the University of Future. I will conclude with the industry. Sometimes our industry also, they recruit top engineers and they assign them technician jobs. There is no, so it costs them a lot, and then the engineers are demotivated, and that is we are addressing to, by collecting. Again, I'm going back to the data, so where the data is going to lend us to. I hope I was able to answer.
Thank you, sir. Yes. See, mutual recognition frameworks, looking at them from the talent pooling and talent mobility point of view is a very big animal. What we are sharing are is the different parts of the perspectives, so that at this young age also, and at the skilling institutions and others, we should know that what is being left. Nobody is giving the full solution right now, and not everybody has also the full thing. With this, I'm coming to our last panelist, Dr. Irakli Kodeli, and I'm not asking any technical skill, job related, that kind of a question, because he has considerable work on the public policy research, comparative analysis of the policies, and to see that how the social inclusion, sustainable development goals, and all those things can be promoted. I want him to share his perspectives that with these digital skills, with the advancements of digital economies, where the talent mobility, talent pooling, remote sourcing basis and other things, how it is, what different kind of a dynamism or different kind of a challenges or different kind of a scenarios, perspectives it is bringing on the table for the policy perspective, social inclusion perspective, SDGs perspectives and others. Because digital infrastructure point of view, we know that digital divide we can bridge by making the digital infrastructure. I'm not asking digital infrastructure, I'm asking skills. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very pertinent question, obviously. Let me zoom out a little bit and provide a bird's eye view on this question from UNESCO's perspective. Coming from the perspective of the need for global governance in this. Because when we're talking about successfully transferring skills across borders and the certification for those skills, what we need fundamentally is a governance mechanism that is based on agreement between the countries. And we don't start talking about this agreement in the vacuum. We start talking about it based on the existing frameworks. And in that context, I think that it's fundamentally important to mention the achievement of the international community in coming together to agree on a common set of values, principles, and policy actions that you find in the recommendation on ethics of artificial intelligence. Not only because it was UNESCO that facilitated that process, but because it is such an achievement to get 193 countries to come together and agree on it. This should be our departing point when we're talking about how to bring that together. And very relevant for skills, as you've mentioned there, and as has been mentioned by Dr. Squaccerini and also by some of the distinguished panelists, is the principle of awareness and literacy. Because when we're talking about harnessing the full power of these new emerging digital technologies, especially artificial intelligence, it's not enough to talk about building the requisite skills within the only just academia and industry, but we really have to talk about society as a whole, because only then can we, only a society that has a certain degree of awareness of the ethical impact, the broader societal impact that these technologies will have, only that society can engage meaningfully in shaping the future that will be impacted by these technologies. So that principle is really important, and then the recommendation translates the principle of awareness and literacy into two specific policy areas that are relevant here, that is education and research, and also economy and labor. I will not go into the the details, granular details of these policy areas, but I'll just point out certain key ingredients that are important for our discussion. I've already mentioned the need for global governance and cooperation across borders, and in the context of the G20 this is of course very relevant. Another very important idea is the need for diversity. This is of course at the core of UNESCO's mandate, and when we're talking about such things as creating standard curricula, for instance, in schools, and not just in schools but in every level of education, it's critically important to think about the language diversity, for instance, and which languages are we talking about, and making sure that this curricula exist in local, when applicable, indigenous languages as well, to promote education for all in these spheres. Another very important point is and this directly relates to the agenda of equity and fairness and equality, so that the benefits of these technologies are distributed equitably to all. And the last point that I will mention here is the need for multidisciplinary approach, and I cannot stress this enough. It was already stressed, but from UNESCO's perspective this is very important, that when we're talking about prerequisite skills, we have to really go beyond the technical skills of STEM and coding, and talk about such skills as teamwork, skills that are related to creativity, because these days we cannot work alone. We're always working as groups. Critically important are socio-emotional skills, and so it's really important to talk about that. I said that was the last point, but I do want to mention something else, and that is the need to maintain a continuous knowledge of the impact that these technologies are having on the labor market. It is not an easy task, but it also requires cross-border collaboration and having up-to-date, fit-for-purpose data, and you've mentioned data, the importance of making decisions based on that data, and precisely for that reason UNESCO is creating an observatory, a global observatory on ethics of AI, which will be multi-dimensional, and because the recommendation includes these very important critical policy areas of economy and labor and research and education, this observatory will also capture the data that is coming from there, up to date and easily accessible, open for everyone. Thank you.
Huge imperative for international collaboration. I'm saying that. Yes. Yes, sir. We have already overshot the time, so
yeah, just quickly, I just want to just build on, the technical know-how, I think is all taught well. One thing I think student particular is a culture and language. It's a really important, and it is very vital. We always talk about the what, but not so much the how. So perhaps as a recommendation to G20 is exchange of a student, exchange of faculty, because we have different culture. We need to appreciate who we are. It's not one is better than other, but having an understanding and building on each other culture. Is not being aware, what you just articulated well, is could lead sometime to not understanding each other. So culture and language is very important. Otherwise we become ethnocentric, my way or highway. So that is very, very important to having an exchange student, and university and academia and institution, they need to facilitate that process.
Very rightly said. Any other? I will request from any other panelists if you have any point, or otherwise we can conclude.
In a tradition of a dialogue, let me reinforce that point also from UNESCO's perspective. The recommendation talks about breaking down the barriers that exist for academic exchanges in the digital sphere. And so as we try to implement this recommendation around the world, and working, by the way, very closely with India as the third biggest AI ecosystem that played a pivotal role in bringing this recommendation together, that will be one of the areas that we'll be looking into breaking down barriers in exchange of knowledge. Thanks.
I have two data points on this. European Union has been working since last 30 years to promote within the European Union, 29 countries or 30 countries, the talent pooling and talent mobility. And they started with the culture and language. But the result between the intra-EU mobility is still far lesser than what is intra-US mobility or this thing. And it is lesser even with the third world countries to the European migration. That is one data point. But the challenge, this doesn't negate the point, but a challenge lies is that earlier people were going to UAE in order to get exposed to that culture. And they have to accommodate there. But now UAE might be hiring a person sitting in India and working from India. He has to be aware of their cultural disposition, which is bigger challenge, and it has to be achieved at individual level. You have to keep your mind open.
Yeah, just 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds, okay? Because you are mentioning about G20, you want to do that, right? But from my experiences for international cooperation, I would suggest from that for 20 countries together. So I think you better have some 2 or 3 countries have some discussion to do the mutual recognition first. Otherwise, too many countries, I think you have to start from some core country. Like we have the conceptual APSF, Asia Pacific Skills Foundation, the conceptual one. I think I can give you some reference. Maybe you can take some reference. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear all panelists. It has been a pleasure listening to you and the audience who bear with us.